Hi and welcome to part 2 of this video series that we're doing around creating a data dashboard in Google Data Studio for logins. This video is brought to you by AppsEvents and Acer, and I'm Charlie Love. So here's the spreadsheet. This is what's created by the app script that you saw in the previous video. And in here we've got a wide range of information. Let's just scan through it. We've got the primary email. We've got when the user accounts were created. We've got email addresses. We've got some custom student IDs that might have been added from our management information system. These could be employee IDs or the like. As well, we've got some information about whitelisting, IP addresses. We've got in here delegated admins, mailboxes it's set up, last time they logged in, the names, and so a wide range of information. We've got the organizational unit path, and you can see here's the path here for different students in different years. This could equally be organizations and employers and offices or whatever. And then we've got at the end here where I've taken the actual elements of the organizational unit path and I've split them out so that they are now in separate columns, along with the last time the user logged in. Okay, and the date the user last logged in. So that's all interesting. Remember, this is only going to have users who logged in the last 7 days. So what would be really interesting is to know by organization, let's say by school, how many users have logged in. So I'm just going to select all my data and I'm going to insert here, I'm going to go to data and I'm going to make a pivot table, do that on a new sheet and create that. Cool. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add for my columns, let's choose school. No, not school. I don't want it by column. I want that my row. That's what I wanted. So I'll just drag it up to row. So here's my schools. Grand. I don't want to show totals. I'm not interested in totals. And what I want to show is count how many people logged in. So I'm just going to go to values and I'm just going to add the primary email address. Now I've got this annoying one for the blank. There's the blank information there. So I'm going to take that out through a filter. I'm just going to add a filter in here for school. And I'm going to click on that and hide the blanks. Go ahead. So once the script is up and running, you can schedule that script to run every day and it'll pull the data in for your kind of last period of 7 days. Remember, there's a bit of a delay in logins being recorded against users. So it'll maybe be a day or so delay on that, but you'll see that data for the last 7 days, which is what's important. So what I've now got is, as soon as I've created this pivot table, the pivot table will actually recreate every time the data set is refreshed. So that'll happen automatically. And I'm going to call this pivot table, in this case, I'll just call it role. So I've got a reference for that. Okay, so that's my students. So that's the information that I've got. Now, what would be really useful, and I've prepared this earlier, is actually some information from Google Maps about the locations of my various establishments. So I actually have that here. And what I've got is the sector, whether it's a primary school or a secondary school, the school name, its longitude and latitude. And just because I'm like that, I actually split that out into, the latitude and the longitude is how I split that out. I don't need these X and Y, but I do need this long lat. So although it's actually lat long, it should be. Okay, so that's all good. So let me show you what we can do in Google Data Studio. And welcome to Google Data Studio. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a blank report. I'm just going to start with a blank template. So I'm just going to click there. I've gone to datastudio.google.com to get started on this. Now, when you start creating from a blank template or from any blank starting point, you choose a data source. And there's lots of different connectors that allow you to link different data sources. I'm going to be very straightforward. I'm just going to use Google Sheets as my data source. So I'm just going to click on Google Sheets. I'm going to click on my students. And the first one I'm going to bring in is just my users from earlier. So I'm just going to click Add to add that data set. And then I can just add that to the report. Grand. Now I'll come up with a default table that I'm just going to delete in a second because I don't really want to see that at the moment. So I'm just going to delete that. I'm now going to add 2 other data sources. I'm going to add my pivot table, and I'm going to add my location data. So I'm going to manage added data sources, and I'm going to add a data source again, Google Sheets, students, but this time I'm going to choose the role-based one. So that's role, and I'm going to add that. And I'm going to just delete the information I've got there. I'm just going to check, because I think it'd be useful if our role told us how many people were in each establishment or in each school. So let's go back to Drive just to look at that. Open students, and now I'm going to open the pivot table. Now it'd be great if we had another column here that just told us how many people were there. So let's call this, in this case, I'll call it school role. And let's say there's 45 kids here, 200 there, 250 here. Let's go 220 here, 40 and 45. So these are the school roles. There's a population of that. So that's the maximum number that people could have logged in. And we'll save that. Now, because I've updated that data source, I'm just going to go back into my Manage Added Data Sources, back into my role and edit that. And I'm just going to refresh the fields. And it's got a new field, school role, and apply that. Perfect. So now I've added that in and finished that. Now, next one I'm going to do is add the location data. So I'm just going to go back into my resource, close that, back into here, the resources here, add a data source, sheets again, and this time I'm going to use school locations. Sheet 1, that's fine, and add that. Now I'm going to tweak something here because I want to make sure that Data Studio understands what the columns mean. So there's a little bit of work to do with that. So when I look at my longitude and latitude, it's not quite right. So I'm just going to go back into my managing my data sources. I'm going to edit my locations. And here I'm going to just take my loglat, and actually it's not text. It's a geolocation information, and it's latitude, comma, longitude. That's what it needs to be. That's perfect. That's what I need. The rest of these are just the information that I need. Great. Finish that. And now I'm going to close that. So now I've got everybody who logged in the last 7 days, a pivot table showing me the total for each of those schools in the last 7 days, a total with, and another file with the locations of those schools and the their names. So, and their roles. I've got that information there in the data sets too. So now what I'm going to do is create a blended resource. So I'm going to go manage blended data, and this is where you link two data sources based on common attributes. So I'm going to add a new data view, and I'm going to have the role on one side, and I'm going to have locations on the other. And I'm going to choose school to link them with, and I'm going to want the school role. I'm going to want to be able to see the school role, sorry, and the count of how many people have logged in. So those two bits of information I need. And over here, I'm going to want the longitude and latitude. And that's probably enough for me for just now. So this is the information I've got, and I'm going to call that this new data source geodata and save that. And I'm going to close it. So now I've got my geodata. I'm going to create the map, and we're going to create a map with some bubbles on it. And the size of those bubbles will depend on the higher the percentage, the bigger the bubble. That's how it's going to work. So I'm just going to click on Add a Chart and go to Google Maps and choose the bubble map. And we'll put it up here, and I'm just going to enlarge that a bit, just so we got it filling the screen there. Now, you might notice that if this, for you, it might come up, it'll choose a data source at the beginning. Make sure that it's choosing the geodata data source and not the locations one that we had earlier. Now I want to do, in order to get the bubbles to be the right size, we've got the locations. You can see the little blue dots are the locations, but we want them to be bubbles that are the correct size. So I'm going to create a field for that. So I'm just going to click on my size, and I'm going to create field. And they're going to call this percentage logins. Percentage logins. And in here, I'm just going to say, right, it's going to be the count of the primary email divided by the school role. It's going to be a number, numeric, percentage, apply. And what we now have, and if I click on view, we now have the locations, but we don't have the name of the school to identify them. So we'll click edit, and we're looking for the label. So let's here, we need to get a tooltip. So let's choose the school, drag that in for the tooltip. I'm going to view that now. So now we have the school as the label and the percentage logins. And that's how you create a dashboard with Google Data Studio to show geolocation information with the number of logins per site. Thank you. This has been a tutorial brought to you by AppsEvents and Acer, and my name is Charlie Love.